When you first lay eyes on a piece of driftwood, it might just look like an old, weathered fragment of a tree, tossed ashore by the waves, bleached by the sun and twisted by time. But for those with a creative eye and a deep appreciation for nature's artistry, driftwood is more than just a leftover from the sea, it's a treasure. It holds stories of wind and water, of journeys across rivers and oceans. And when it's transformed into sculpture, it becomes something truly magical, an expression of nature's hand shaped by time, elevated by human touch. Nature-inspired driftwood sculptures are some of the most quietly powerful art forms you can encounter. They don't try to outshine their natural origins. Instead, they honor them. Each sculpture is built on the foundation of what the earth has already created: gnarled branches, smooth edges, unique curves, all of it born not in a studio but in the wild. There's a rawness to driftwood that can't be replicated. It carries the fingerprint of the elements. And when artists work with it, they're not just creating something new, they're continuing a story that nature began. Many driftwood sculptures draw directly from the world around us: animals, trees, birds, waves, mountains. It's as if the wood is being returned to its natural roots, only this time through a different lens. A bent, curved piece of driftwood might suddenly become the neck of a heron. A cluster of jagged branches could become the outspread wings of an eagle mid-flight. And often the artist doesn't even have to force these shapes. They're already there, hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. That's part of the beauty of driftwood art. It's about seeing potential in what others might overlook. There's an element of respect and restraint in this kind of work. Unlike other sculptural techniques that involve heavy carving or reshaping, driftwood sculpture is more about selection and gentle guidance. The artist becomes something like a curator of nature's raw materials, choosing the right piece, turning it just so, attaching it carefully, preserving its natural form as much as possible. The challenge is not to overpower the wood but to enhance its story. It's a kind of partnership between artist and nature. Some sculptures remain purely abstract. They don't depict anything specific, and yet they evoke emotions, memories, or a sense of movement. A tall, spiraling arrangement of thin driftwood pieces might suggest a gust of wind, a whirlwind frozen in time. A flowing form made of long, curved branches might resemble ocean waves or rolling hills. These pieces invite interpretation. They let the viewer bring their own experience into the art. And that openness, that sense of connection to the natural world, is part of what makes driftwood sculpture so deeply appealing. The tones and textures of driftwood are also incredibly varied and visually rich. You'll find wood that's almost bone white, stripped bare by sun and salt. Others might retain darker tones, weathered to a silvery gray or deep brown. The grain is often emphasized by exposure, with cracks, crevices, and natural lines running like maps across the surface. No two pieces are ever alike. You might find a branch with a natural twist, or a knot that looks like an eye, or a smooth curve that feels like it was carved by water. These details aren't flaws, they're features. And they're celebrated in driftwood art. Because driftwood is naturally lightweight and porous, it's a surprisingly flexible material to work with. Sculptures can range in size from tiny tabletop arrangements to massive installations that stretch across walls or ceilings. Some artists create wall-mounted designs, flowing arrangements that mimic the shape of a tree or a school of fish swimming across the surface. Others work in 3 dimensions, building entire figures or scenes from nothing but interlocking driftwood. The possibilities are endless, and yet the aesthetic remains grounded, always organic, always earthy, always authentic. Another remarkable aspect of nature-inspired driftwood sculptures is their sustainability. Unlike traditional woodworking that often involves cutting down trees, driftwood is already fallen, already discarded by nature. Using it in art is a form of reuse, of giving new life to something that's already lived a full natural cycle. In this way, driftwood sculptures don't just represent nature, they participate in it. They remind us of the beauty of cycles, of transformation, of the quiet power of decay and rebirth. In homes and interior spaces, driftwood sculptures bring a unique kind of warmth and character. They blend easily with natural decor styles, Scandinavian, rustic, coastal, bohemian, and they can also offer a striking contrast in modern, minimalist environments. A single sculptural piece on a mantel or coffee table can anchor an entire room. It draws the eye, invites touch, and adds a sense of grounded calm. There's something incredibly soothing about the presence of wood that's come from the sea. It feels lived in, familiar, and peaceful. Many artists also combine driftwood with other natural materials to expand the story even further. You might see driftwood paired with stones, shells, feathers, or even live plants. These combinations echo the diversity of nature and create dynamic, multi-textured compositions. A driftwood base might hold a delicate glass orb. A tangle of small branches might cradle a moss-covered rock. These aren't just decorative choices, they're conversations between materials. They speak of forests and oceans, of life above ground and below water. They create balance. The creative process behind these sculptures is often driven by intuition. It's not about drawing a plan and sticking to it. It's about responding to what each piece of wood offers. An artist might spend hours walking along beaches or riverbanks, scanning the sand for just the right piece. They're looking for lines, shapes, balance. And once they've gathered their materials, the act of building becomes almost meditative, placing one piece at a time, turning it in the light, imagining what it could become. It's a process rooted in observation and patience. Even the tools used are usually simple: wire, nails, adhesives, but the art is in the arrangement. Getting the balance right. Making sure the weight is distributed. Ensuring the piece feels stable even if it looks wild and flowing. And always making sure that the spirit of the wood is preserved. That it still feels like it came from the earth, from water, from air. Some of the most breathtaking driftwood sculptures are those that exist outdoors, where they can continue to interact with the elements. Garden sculptures, public installations, and even functional pieces like benches or arches made from driftwood become part of the landscape. They age with the seasons. They change color in the rain. They gather moss. And eventually they might return to the earth entirely. There's a kind of poetic humility in that, a willingness to be part of nature's cycle rather than separate from it. For those who admire driftwood sculpture, owning a piece can feel like bringing a piece of the wild into your space. It's not polished. It's not perfect. But it carries with it the essence of wind, tide, and time. It reminds us that beauty doesn't always have to be created, it can also be found. And when it's found with care and transformed with intention, it becomes more than just a piece of wood. It becomes a story, a symbol, a gentle presence in a world that's often too loud, too fast, too artificial. That's the magic of nature-inspired driftwood sculptures. They don't just imitate nature, they collaborate with it. They take what's been discarded, weathered, or forgotten and turn it into something meaningful, something lasting. A smooth curve worn by tides, a jagged edge formed by time, a knot shaped by wind, each tells a silent story, and the artist becomes less a creator and more a translator. In that sense, driftwood art isn't just about design. It's about listening. Listening to the textures, the grain, the scars, and the echoes left behind by water and time. And in doing so, these sculptures invite us to slow down, to look closer, and to see the potential in what surrounds us every single day. There's something deeply grounding about driftwood. It's raw and honest, shaped not in factories but in forests and waves. When it's brought into a space, whether a cozy living room, a sunlit studio, or a peaceful garden, it brings a quiet energy with it. Not loud or bold, but steady, natural, real. A driftwood sculpture might stand tall like a tree, curve like the crest of a wave, or sprawl like the roots of something ancient. And each piece, no matter how abstract or refined, holds a trace of the world it came from. The scent of salt, the sound of rustling leaves, the memory of a riverbank, it all lingers gently in the wood. These sculptures do more than decorate. They offer perspective. They remind us that beauty doesn't always begin with perfection. Sometimes it starts with wear, with weather, with time. A twisted branch that once might have seemed broken or useless becomes the centerpiece of a room. A gnarled plank becomes a symbol of resilience, of nature's ability to shape, adapt, and surprise. And perhaps that's the deeper message behind driftwood art, that transformation is possible. That even what's been tossed aside by the tides can become something treasured. There's also a kind of sustainability built into driftwood sculpture that feels especially important today. No trees are cut down to make it. No forests are disturbed. It's a celebration of reuse, of giving second life to what the ocean or forest has already released. It's thoughtful, responsible, conscious. And in a world of fast production and disposable everything, that kind of art feels like a quiet revolution. One that doesn't shout its values but lives them. One that invites us to consider not just what we bring into our homes, but why we bring it, and what it represents. The artists who work with driftwood often describe the process as meditative. There's no forcing the wood. No shaping it into something it doesn't want to be. Instead, there's a dialogue, a give and take between hand and grain, intention and instinct. What emerges is something deeply organic, shaped by nature and refined by care. It's a kind of co-creation where the artist doesn't dominate the material but works with it, honoring its history and letting its character lead the way. And when we, as viewers, engage with these pieces, we're drawn into that same rhythm. We're reminded to pause, to notice, to appreciate the textures of life that aren't polished or perfect, but rich with experience. A driftwood sculpture may not sparkle. It may not impress at first glance. But spend a moment with it, trace its lines with your eyes, and you'll begin to feel what makes it so captivating. It invites curiosity. It invites reflection. Feels alive. So the next time you encounter one of these sculptures, standing tall in a gallery, perched quietly in a corner, or emerging like a secret in a garden, take a moment. Let it speak. Let it remind you of the rivers, the oceans, the winds, and the hands that brought it here. Let it remind you of your own connection to nature and time. Because at its heart, that's what nature-inspired driftwood sculpture is all about. Not just art for the sake of art, but art that tells stories, that builds bridges, that helps us see the world and ourselves a little more clearly.